We're live.
Awesome. Fantastic. Hold on one second, if you don't mind. I just lost my place, and now I feel terrible.
I feel like Bill O'Reilly. We'll do it live.
We'll do it live.
Okay.
We'll do it live. Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live.
We'll do it live.
Screw it.
Do it live. I'll write it, and we'll do it live.
We'll make it up. I'll do it live. All right. In 3, 2. Good evening and welcome to the third edition of IAOA's Collabcast, a podcast about insurance agency owners, by insurance agency owners and for insurance agency owners. As always, I'm Adam Serwinski, joined by the often imitated but never duplicated Nick Ayers. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great, and that is true. Never, ever duplicated.
And thank goodness for that.
My wife says amen.
In tonight's session of Collabcast, we are chatting with Tennessee super agent and proud Maine East Blue Demon, Keith Rocha. That's right, we're going OG with Keith, back to the days of in Park Ridge, Illinois. But before we introduce Keith to the group, I want to remind everyone that this podcast is made for, by, and about you. So we have developed it in a way that allows you to steer the conversation. You see at the bottom of the Zoom screen, there's a button labeled chat. Take a second now and click that button. It'll open up the chat screen and allow you to ask questions, add comments, and or just interact with Keith. And feel free to make fun of us. It's okay. Please feel free to use the feature throughout this podcast. We really want to know and crowdsource this conversation. So now we're back to the reason we're all here, the gorgeous Keith Rocha. All right, one of the most helpful and active IAOA posters on commercial insurance. Welcome, Keith.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited to be on here. This is a new experience for me.
I have one quick question I want to ask. I just random, because whenever somebody says they're a fan of a particular sports team, I always feel the need, and that sports team is a successful sports team, a recently successful sports team. I always feel the need to test their fandom. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Because
I imagine that there are a lot more Cubs fans now than there were 12 months ago. Would you both say that that's an accurate?
Absolutely. Happens anytime whoever wins, there's always more fans.
So my first question, just as a test, is who bats eighth for the Cubs?
Usually the pitcher.
Right. He's right on that.
You pass.
So when I was born, my dad had to miss the playoff game in 1984 because I was born. Both my grandpas went to the game instead of him. And that's when I was welcomed into the Cub world the day I was born.
Yeah, where I'm from, everybody and their mother is now a Golden State Warriors fan. So you can understand the cynicism, right? So yeah, that's why I ask.
Legitimate question.
There's plenty of room on the bandwagon, though. We do not discriminate. We will take all comers. We just will date you. It's like wine. You got to know how long you've been around, right?
I guess.
So my first debit card, credit card. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely getting those numbers down, by the way. Write those down quick. Very cool. All right. Well, before we get into it, we like to start where it all started for you, Keith. We wanted to let people know and understand how you got into the insurance industry and how the heck you ended up in Tennessee.
So left the great state of Illinois because I had to get away for college, like a lot of people do. Came down to Carson Newman to play football, which is outside of Knoxville, Tennessee. Met my wife there. After school, moved down to Chattanooga, where she was from, just for the summer, just to be close to her, and never left. During that summer, got a job with a construction company, just because I needed something for the summer. I stuck around, kept that job, eventually got moved into more of a sales and project management role. Really enjoyed the sales side, really the relationship developing side of things, and knew that I wanted to do something sales related long term. I spent probably a good year or so looking at different types of sales positions, whether that was inside sales, outside sales, and ended up connecting with actually a friend of mine from back home who owned an agency in downtown Chicago. And he hired me. He was originally a career Mass Mutual agent, but had started on the PNC side about 3 years before I got there. So anyway, he hired me and to work remotely for him down here in Chattanooga. Very rough start to the industry. It was a brutal way to get in. Would not recommend it. Good dude, but starting and working remotely for somebody to try to be 100% commission when you're the sole breadwinner, pregnant with her second kid, it was horrible. So I had to figure things out real quick. I mean, I never had anybody even walk me through generating a proposal, going on an appointment, how to close a deal. A lot of it was just initially figuring it out on my own. Well, started to have some success, and a couple years in, one of my better clients, they were a wealth management firm. I had their business insurance and one of the owners' personal insurance. They were wanting to get into the PNC side of things, and so I helped them. They hired me to help them start an insurance agency, and so that was a great way to start and learn how to start an agency, was to do it on someone else's dime. Got paid a nice salary.
It's always better when you get somebody else's money, right?
Yes, absolutely. It was awesome. So it was a great way to learn how to start an agency, how to get carrier contracts, which is one of the hardest things, what management systems to use, the whole 9 yards. And after working for them for a little over a year, decided, hey, if I'm going to be in this industry long term, I need to have some skin in the game. And so there was some talk about me coming in as a partner, and ultimately it just didn't make sense for me to come in. So I resigned. Actually tried to buy the book. They didn't want to sell, which was fine. So that's when I started this company almost 3 years ago. So July 2014 was when I launched my company, the American Insurance Group.
Awesome. So I recall, and I'm gonna butcher kind of a story here. I'm gonna let you kind of fill in where I'm wrong.
Yep.
I recall sitting in the hotel lobby at the Wyndham Bay Resort in San Diego in November.
Stromso.
Yeah, and we were there for Mike Stromso's event, and it was probably 2:00 in the morning, or I don't remember what it was. It was some ungodly hour. And you and I, in the middle of our conversation, I had mentioned I cut my teeth on personal lines. I'm a personal lines guy through and through. I feel extremely comfortable writing, whether it's anything from somewhat non-standard to more high affluent clientele. I feel like I've got a very good, comfortable grasp on personal lines insurance. When it comes to commercial lines, I struggle personally. Yeah. I struggle because I feel that, if I have to fill out an accord form and a supplemental, that it's just so annoying. And I get it. There's bigger premiums, but I remember you and I having this conversation, and you were, rightfully so mocking me and making fun of me. And that's fine. But tell me, why for you, especially starting out, I mean, most people, I assume, start out on the personal side, but you kind of gravitated to the commercial side. Tell us, for you, what the appeal to commercial is, and maybe break down, too, for yourself, what you kind of like to specialize in, whether it's small, medium, large. But more than that, why the appeal to start there and to go in that direction and to stay in that direction?
Yeah, great question. So commercial, kind of the space that I play in, I love what most carriers consider small commercial. So that's premiums typically under 100,000 in annual premium. That's kind of my space. And I've got a few larger clients, but usually I'm targeting the 20 to 50,000 in premium, and it's typically an underserved market. Most of your agencies that are commercial focused, they're not going after those accounts. They may have some, but a lot of the larger ones, like here in town, I got J. Smith Lanier, BB&T as kind of my two big commercial competitors. They don't even pay their producers unless the account is generating 5,000 or more in revenue. Wow. They don't even get paid on them. Wow. So it's got to be a decent sized commercial account for them to even consider it. And then you've got the other side, the smaller agencies that traditionally are personal lines focused, and they may do some personal lines, but I just find it is kind of an underserved market, and you can still be kind of how I think personal lines insurance was back in the day, where it really was the trusted advisor, making sure that you're taking care of them to protect their business.
Mm-hmm.
Now with all the Geicos of the world coming in with your 15% and 15 minutes and insurance less than that, it's kind of beaten down a little bit of the personal line side, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. And so if I was going to build a totally brand new business on something where there's a ton of money coming in, trying to compete against me, why not go to an area that is generating really good commissions, solid commissions? There's not a ton of, in my opinion, competition in the space, and just dominate it.
Right.
And then additionally, in the small commercial realm, I don't have to rely on highly compensated producers to take care of that market. One of my CSRs, I hired her right out of college. It was her first real job, and one of our better accounts, she has pretty much done everything for them. I think they spend about 55,000 or so in premium, and I've interacted with them only because she's been on maternity leave these last 2 months, which that's been horrible. I need her back. But on the large commercial, it's different. You usually got to have that face-to-face all the time at renewal, multiple times a year. And when you lose a $500,000 premium account, I mean, that can be brutal. You have a bunch of $20,000, $50,000 accounts. It's not as painful if you happen to lose one. But anyway, so yeah, I love that. That's kind of small, medium-sized account.
Gotcha.
So talk a little bit about how, when you started at the Scratch agency, how you developed into that middle space, like from not just staffing, but also in how your business operated and what you targeted and what you did.
Yeah. So the big challenge with any agency getting started is carrier contracts. I will say with your commercial focused, it's a little bit easier to get really interest from carriers, or even ability to get access to carriers through general agencies that have most of your standard markets. You can get access to Liberty, Travelers, Hartford, CNA, any of the big names through pretty much any general agency. Can't really do that on the personal line side.
Right.
And so that was part of it. When I got started, I opened day one with MetLife and Hartford Commercial. That was it for the first, almost a year in business. And so I was writing a lot through program administrators, through general agencies, Insurance Noodle, had that for a little while, just wherever I could. So yeah, I was taking some hit on commission because I didn't have the direct contract, but I wrote a bunch with Hartford, and then it made it a lot easier to add my additional carrier lineups that I have now, because now I could just flip those accounts to there. So that was kind of a focus initially, was to go after good quality business that I knew standard markets would want, and I could write quickly and efficiently through general agencies.
So just as a follow-up to that, you mentioned starting out, you did a lot more with the GA side, and now you're a lot more direct, if I'm understanding you.
Yeah.
Talk about, how much business are you now placing with general agencies, and how does somebody who is writing commercial, they can't get the contract, so they're writing through GAs, how do they make that transition to get a lot more, if they so choose, get a lot more direct appointments?
Yeah. If I was to start over again, I would say I have some niches, but I would get even more focused on what I specialized in. If you write even just one industry, that is extremely helpful in getting a contract, and even being able to create a program, because now you're the expert and you're writing a ton of business. So I've got one I'm working on with the Hartford, and they'll give me some additional compensation and additional pricing once I get to a certain size with that particular industry. So to me, I think that's one of the keys with commercial, is to learn a space or segment. You don't want to do trucking one day, you don't want to do med mal the other day, and then aviation another day. That's a disaster. That's what I did when I first started with that first agency. It was horrible trying to figure out, okay, what carrier do I go to for this, for the comp, for the BOP, for the package, and then different the next day. Not the way to do it. Target an industry or segment of industry. So if it's contractors, go after all your artists and contractors. It's going to be a lot of the similar stuff. A lot of the same carriers are going to write it. You can be able to speak their language. You know what they need. You know what they want. So much easier.
Yeah. So, I mean, going on that, I'm sorry, just to jump in here. You talked a little bit about.
Did we lose
Lost you, Nick?
Oh.
Oh, I'm here. My video. I apologize. This is what happens when you do it live. You talk about niches. You talk about all that. Number one, what are some of the niches that you focus on in your agency? And then can you talk a little bit about, in your opinion, which is better? Is it better? And I think from hearing you, I kind of get the assumption, but is it better to be niche focused versus a generalist? Or is it better to, be that all things to all people? Where's an agency, in your opinion, going to make the most amount of revenue?
Definitely niche. Is from a revenue standpoint, the more you can niche, the more revenue opportunity there is, because then things start to open up where you can create a program with a carrier that you're not just getting profit sharing, but it's a whole nother level. I mean, you got to get to a certain size before that's even an option. And Jesse Parenti would be the guy to talk to more. So I'm just kind of in the early stages of getting that going.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, my niche, one of my niches, is property owners. Whether that's a guy that just has
habitational,
all of the above.
Okay.
So it can be a guy that's got 2 rental properties to just single family rental properties, to apartment complexes, to commercial properties. I've got a ton of self-storage, love the self-storage space, commercial properties. And then I would include condo associations kind of in that. We've got a decent amount of condo associations, but that by far is my top space. A couple of things about it. It's pretty much all BOP or package driven, which is awesome. And it's like writing a large house. So typically I'm getting 18 to 20% commission from the carriers to write a massive house. And then once I write it, there's not really much to do but send out an EPI once a year. Very low service, very high commission percentage. And these investors, especially, you get some of the younger ones, they're adding stuff. One of my larger accounts, since I picked him up 3 years ago, I mean, he's probably added 6 storage facilities, 16 single family homes, and a number of other stuff. Just closed on 2 more on Monday. And he's 42. So, I mean, he hasn't even quit his full-time job yet to do this full-time. He's about to. So that's one reason I love that space. I've been intentional now about not doing contractors. I have a few. I do not want the contractor space. Mostly workers' comp driven is about usually half the premium. You're getting on the commission side 7, 11, maybe you get 15% first year depending on the carrier on the commission side, and then the service end. I mean, it's a whole lot higher. Certificates of insurance left and right. Hey, can you add waiver subrogation, primary non-contributory, additional insureds, and all this specific language? I mean, it's just a service headache.
That makes sense.
And your margin on it is way smaller. So I have a few, but I'm not actively going after, and I'm very selective about the ones that we'll work with.
Yes.
Hey, can I just 2 follow-up questions to that,
Yep.
Keith? First off, EPI. I know it probably makes a lot of sense to a lot of people on here, but just for those who haven't dealt with EPI before, explain what that is.
Yeah, just evidence of property insurance.
Okay. And then the second thing I wanted to follow up with, you talk about these niches. Walk them through how you would advise someone who's listens to this podcast says, I want to start a niche. I want to focus on it. As far as developing a program, focusing on a certain industry, how you figure out what their needs are and what their cares are if you're starting from scratch, page 1.
Yeah. So one, what do you enjoy? What do you enjoy doing? I love coffee. So probably my my second top niche is coffee shop owners and coffee roasters, just because I hang out at coffee shops all the time. I get to know them. So I would say
you're such a hipster, Keith.
Give the guy a beard.
Coffee mug. So if you're going to focus on something that you enjoy doing, and then the other side is I enjoy property investment. So that's my other niche. And then 2, just talk to people that are already doing that. You come at it as, hey, I'm a fellow business owner, just love to chat about business, what's working for you, what pains do you have, get to know that industry, and then just delve deep, be active in what they're active in. So if there's different associations that they're focused on, like here in town, we've got the Apartment Association for apartment owners. We've got the Greater Chattanooga Real Estate Investors Association. If there's not an association in your area, make one. That's what Tom Larson did. That's why he's dominating also the investment property space, because he's the head of his Real Estate Investors Association in his area, and he's crushing it. And so stay focused in that area and delve deep. As far as determining the needs, there are various resources out there as far as risk profiles to know, okay, for this particular account, here's typically the type of insurance coverages that they need. Vertifor is my software vendor, and they have a product called Reference Connect. I believe you can get access to it by itself. I believe you can also get access to that through, I want to say Rough Notes has a subscription that's something similar.
What's it called?
Reference Connect.
I'm going to try to pull it up here real quick while you're talking.
Yeah, and then
it's by
IRMI,
Vertifor?
which is, yep. And then IRMI, which is IRMI, or something like that. Anyway, Insurance Risk Management Institute. They've got a subscription side as well that you can pull all sorts of information, whether it's ISO policy forms, risk profiles, all that. If you're looking at getting into commercial, subscribe to one of those. They're not that expensive.
Is this what you're talking about, Keith?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
What's this called? What is it, roundabout? I mean, it's probably different for everybody, but is this a pretty expensive thing for people to jump on?
I don't know what it is by itself, because it's all part of my package, and it's not. They've got a platform now. They don't even break out the pricing separately if you're on the agency platform. So I don't know exactly, but maybe $100 a month at the most, I would say.
Yeah. Okay.
That would surprise me. If it
probably
was
dependent on users and all that good stuff, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly.
So
and if you now, I don't know that I'd go Reference Connect. I'd probably go Rough Notes or Insurance Risk Management Institute before I do Reference Connect by itself.
Gotcha. I have a question. So I want to get right down kind of to it here. And if you guys have a question, please utilize the chat. We're going to try to get to questions throughout the show. That's part of the benefit of being live and in the show, is that you guys can engage with Keith and ask him specific questions, and maybe he'll answer specific questions for your needs. But he's drinking coconut water. I was right. I nailed it. Hit it on the head. Okay.
And he said he liked coffee.
All right. So I want you to talk to a guy like me. Now, you're going to be a featured speaker at Innovation 18 in Phoenix. Shameless plug. But you're going to be a speaker there, and you're going to be talking. I imagine a good portion of the room is going to be people like me, right? What you're talking about is how to get started in commercial.
Yep.
I want you, without having to divulge everything, but just give me some bullet points. Talk to a personal alliance guy like me. I want to get started. I want to jump in. But I'm a personal alliance guy, and we're talking two different animals here. How do I go about slaying this dragon, or at least finding some short-term success? What would be some of the things that you would kind of recommend? How does a personal alliance guy jump in here?
Yeah, I would start with kind of your Main Street type business, your coffee shops, your restaurants. Most of the time, if you're a personal lines guy, you've got the multi-line carriers that will do commercial. Now, maybe you're stuck with just Safeco and MetLife. You've got to go find a contract to have access to commercial. But if you've got one of your big carriers, you probably can do most of your Main Street commercial. That stuff is really easy to find somebody to write it. A lot of that's relationship driven. Start on that space. Find some success in there. Build that book, and just kind of build your confidence in that. I think a lot of times you get this feeling of, hey, I got to know everything about it before I start,
Right.
which I don't think you need to. There's so many resources out there.
You get paralyzed just from thinking about
Absolutely.
it, right? Yeah.
Absolutely. I've talked to a guy who felt like he needed to get his CIC first before he could start doing the commercial. CIC would be extremely helpful. Start selling commercial way before you get that.
Right.
You don't need that to sell commercial.
Right.
And I mean, just if you do a Google search on, I mean, so many agencies have written articles about specific industries, about specific coverages. If you're not sure of the difference between occurrence form and claims made, Google it. I mean, you'll get 20 different articles about it in 2 seconds. Be willing to do the research and do the reading. And then the other is, if you've got a solid carrier, a relationship, and a good underwriter with that carrier, bring them the deals, bring them the accounts. Hey, here's what I'm working on. Will you help me quote this thing? How do I cover this? What are some things I should consider? What am I missing? If it's the right company, right carrier, right underwriter, they'll help you with that.
Gotcha.
So I asked you a question before we started kind of down this road, beginning the kind of niche market, or beginning the commercial play. Why don't we talk a little bit more about your management of your agency and how you staffed and how you kind of worked forward with that? So when you say you talked about how you focused on certain niches, how did you kind of prepare or build your business for that type of work?
As far as just
like, how did you grow? Like, you started off obviously as on your own.
Yeah.
What did you add first? And when you added that, what was the kind of rough timeline of what you would recommend? Sure. And how would you tell someone who's going into that business, as opposed to just how to create the niche, how to staff themselves and build their business to be prepared for that kind of move?
Yeah. As far as staffing, I say hire before you have the absolute need, so you can get ready. I mean, if you're waiting until you have the need.
Can you say that again? Say that again. That was good.
Hire before you have the need.
Hire before you have the need. I like that.
So then you also have the real
quite a motivator.
You have got cash flow, so you got to make sure you can pay that person. So I had to wait about 6 months before I was able to afford to hire a service person. I wanted to hire somebody day one. I just wasn't there financially. But the moment I did, I immediately tried to offload as much of the items that were not selling to that person. So I had a decent size dwelling fire schedule. I didn't do any of that data entry. I immediately trained her on stuff like that so I could focus on selling, on growing the business. And it's really important as an owner to try to delegate as much as you can to things that are not in the business. I shouldn't be sending out a certificate of insurance. I shouldn't be sending out those sort of documents, checking my mail. Staff should be doing that. That's $10, $15 an hour work. I need to focus on, if I'm still selling as an agency owner, new business, or helping my team generate revenue, fine-tuning my processes so I can pull myself out of selling. And that's where I've adjusted now recently, is working on my processes. I hired a full-time sales guy for the commercial side to try to pull myself out of that. But it was a process. I mean, first CSR came 6 months in, had kind of a part-time sales guy that joined me about a year in, had to let him go. That was a mistake. But I've shifted my focus, because to me, it's so easy to find someone who's willing to go straight commission and just say, yeah, go get business. And then they bring in whatever they bring in. Well, I know when I first started straight commission, if someone asked me, can you insure it? Yeah, the answer is always yes. You don't care about loss ratios. You just care about getting it written, whether it's right or not, so you can get paid. That is brutal for your book of business, brutal for your loss ratio, just brutal for everybody involved. So I am intentional about not hiring that route, because I want to make sure that my producer brings in the quality that I want, and then also he can get paid. So he's got a base, he's got commission, and I'm trying to funnel him business that he can just close. It's a lot harder to find somebody who is that guy who can just go out. He can make the kill, go out, get the next one, throw it over the fence, and just, I mean, he's that hunter. That's a hard person to find, and they typically command top dollar from a commission standpoint. And then if they leave like I did,
right,
how much of the book are you going to be able to keep?
right. You had mentioned a couple tools that you were using. What are some things, some resources that you find that you are having success with, whether it's a piece of technology, whether it's a particular vendor, a service? What are some of the areas, or what are some tangible things that people should be implementing in their agency that have helped you?
Yep. So in the commercial space, I would say more so than in personal lines, X dates are super important.
They're gold, right?
Absolutely. So if you don't have a software that can track that for you, even if you just do an Excel spreadsheet, do that.
Mm-hmm.
But start tracking your X dates if you want to do commercial, and just build that relationship with the client over the years. I mean, I've had some clients prospective clients that I've met with 2, 3, 4 renewals that haven't really given me the time of day, but then something changes with their agent. That guy retired, agency merged with somebody else. Now I'm in. They
Mm-hmm.
know me. I got the relationship. If they've got a great relationship with somebody, great. I want to be their backup.
Yeah.
And I just want to drip on them. So that would be one, some sort of CRM, Excel spreadsheet. But then also what we talked about earlier with Reference Connect, it has the questionnaire that you can build out. So if you're not sure what questions to ask, if you're working with a manufacturer, you go to Reference Connect, plug in the SIC or NAICS code for that particular industry, and you can build out, okay, here's all the questions I need to ask for building coverage, for business personal property, business interruption, the whole 9 yards. And then you come in and you're asking all these questions. You automatically look like the expert, and also gives you a snapshot of here's some of the needs that or coverages that type of business typically needs, and then you can give them even a quick summary. So I've done that too.
Are you using this Vertiforce sales track at all?
Yes.
Tell me how that's helping your business.
So I was on. I've used a couple different CRMs: Salesforce, Infusionsoft. Loved Infusionsoft because of the marketing automation. Dual data entry is brutal. I love efficiency. I love using technology for efficiency.
Right.
And adding sales track totally removed that dual data entry. So when a prospective client comes in, it just goes into the CRM, and then when they become an opportunity, it automatically creates that opportunity in my management system, and then the service team can start to work on the submission and kind of take the submission from there. And so it brings the whole thing together. Now, the one piece that's still missing is the marketing automation. That can be fixed with some API stuff, and I'm working on that. And they're working on that too, the vendor. But if you don't have a CRM, get a CRM if you've got dedicated salespeople, whether it's integrated or not.
Right.
So just to jump in real quick on that, on a little bit of that point of that marketing angle, we got a question on the chat, and we want to highlight those so everyone can get on the chat and join in and add a little to the conversation. Sean Moody wants to know exactly what types of things on the marketing front you are doing to prospect, and what's your prospecting, essentially your process for you go through with a new prospect or a new lead, and how you
Yeah, he's specifically asking, are you doing mailings or LinkedIn, direct email? What are some of the things you're doing?
So the main thing that I'm doing is developing referral relationships. I don't do any direct mail at all. I don't have any active marketing campaigns going really at all. It's all relationship building that I've done to try to be community focused in the Chattanooga area. So for the commercial space, there are a couple different industries that make phenomenal referral sources. By far, my number one source has been payroll professionals.
And how do you approach them? Exactly. What are the things that you say to them? When you go into someone's office for the first time who's a payroll company, and they don't know you from Adam,
Yep.
What's the first thing you say to them, and how do you build that relationship?
Yep. So that's the beautiful thing about it is they're all sales guys like us who are trying to grow their book of business, grow their income. And so I approach it with a very soft, hey, and a lot of it is I do some research on LinkedIn, try to find them, and I may message them on there or find their contact info, either make a phone call, shoot them a message. Hey, I see that you're business to business as well. We're calling on the same space. Why don't we grab coffee and see if we can help each other out, and kind of go from there. And the beautiful thing about insurance, everybody has insurance needs. So like half the time or quarter of the amount of the time, I end up writing that guy's personal stuff, which helps solidify that referral relationship. But one thing that people don't realize on the payroll side and why it can work so beautifully if you've got a Paychex rep in your area is Paychex has an independent agency program,
Right.
where you can get set up as a local rep for them. And you only have to write the workers' comp through their agency. You still get paid on it, usually only getting 5 or 7 points, usually not getting more than 11% anyway on workers' comp. And then your loss ratio is protected. But then you can write all the other lines with your agency. And if you get the right payroll rep, they'll bring you in on just about every single prospect that they're working on.
Do you got to keep the work comp with them just
Forever.
for the first year? Forever.
Yep.
And so you write the work comp with them, you take a reduced commission, and then you write the package to whoever.
But the thing is, those people are moving payroll people all the time. So the moment they move, the comp has to go somewhere. So then it comes to me. The moment they move.
Sure, you're just using it as a way to build a relationship with the client and get the essentially it's inadvertently you're kind of buying the lead with reduced commission.
Yeah, essentially. I mean, it's like going through a general agency essentially. And the one nice thing with Paychex, because they are massive and they write a ton with Guard, Hartford, Travelers, is their pricing is ridiculous. And so if you want to be extremely competitive, I mean, they can just dominate because of how much they write with those particular carriers. So we came in with some phenomenal pricing on the comp side, and then the package is just a done deal.
Gotcha. You had mentioned producers. You had mentioned that you have producers. This is something that this is a need in our agency. We need to find producers, commercial producers.
Yep.
Where do you find them? Where do the good ones hang out? Number one, and number two, we didn't prep for this, so if you're not comfortable, that's fine. But what do you pay a good commercial lines rep? I know what to pay a personal lines rep. What do you pay a commercial lines rep if you want them to stay? If you want that quality? So
I think it depends on your model. You got to define what you're looking for from that producer. Are they closing business that's coming to them?
Let's assume I'm going to be selfish here. Let's assume it's our agency and there's not a lot of inbound. They got to go hunting.
They got to go hunting.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're going to have to give them some sort of base and or draw. So I've done base, I've done draw, I've done straight commission. Now I'm on a draw commission, but I'm sending that guy a ton of business to just close. So with your model, you'd have to give him some sort of draw for that ramp up period, because I mean it's going to take
3 months, 4 months, 6 months, a year.
It's going to take. I mean, before he starts to break even, 6 months, year, maybe. Usually with most agencies, they start to recoup, totally break even, maybe at 2 years, depending on how much you pay them. But most of your big agencies are paying anywhere from 40 to 50% new business, and then 20 to 30% on renewal. And that depends on what sort of other packages come with that. Are they getting benefits, 401k, that sort of thing? What sort of support is the agency providing? Do they have a dedicated CSR that's doing all their data entry, or do they have to do all their data entry themselves?
Yeah, there's trade-offs.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got to factor some of that in as far as how you're compensating. But for me, one of the keys is if you got an awesome sales guy, don't have him do the data entry. I don't understand why certain agencies have their top producer who's crushing it working on submissions. You hire somebody for $15 an hour, $20 an hour to handle the submission side. Let them go hunt down the business, not worry about the submissions.
Right.
So we've talked a little about the HR end. What can you talk to a little about the characteristics you look for when you're hiring those producers? Like what types of maybe personality traits you look for, what types of history you look for, or things that you would identify as being key traits that would made you successful and that would make them successful as producers on their own?
Yeah.
And where do they hang out? Where do you find them?
Yeah, I wish they all had the same watering hole. That'd be nice. Networking. I mean, you get to meet people. So for me, I like hiring people with limited and or no insurance experience. I've hired some with, some without. It's so much easier to develop somebody in your own process, in your own system, to try to change them into something new. Now, the advantage of hiring somebody with experiences, they come with industry knowledge. So the one guy who I did hire that had been in the business 6 or 7 years, he was with me the least amount of time because he was not a great salesperson. So I don't know that I'm the best source on that, because I'm adjusting my model to be more of a marketing agency, to have leads that are coming in for my staff to close, because it's so much harder to find somebody who can go out and get it versus the guy who just has to close the deal that comes to him.
Right.
Not to mention, from a compensation standpoint, I don't have to pay him top dollar for that. I'm not paying huge commissions for that. I walk into any Verizon wireless store, find me there's 4 or 5 potential sales guys right there. They're great at closing deals, coming to them all day long. You get one of them out trying to drum up business, no way.
Interesting.
But that, I mean, it's a different mindset going that route, because it's more work for us. I mean, if I want to just add 5 straight commission guys and go find somebody willing to work straight commission, add 5 people, and there's not a whole lot of cost to me. But again, I don't want to go that route.
And I imagine, so we have Sean has another question, and I imagine this might be somewhat state specific. But do you have your producers sign non-competes or / non-solicit agreements? Do those hold up in your state, number one? And what kind of process do you have your producers go through on that end on the HR side?
Yep. Absolutely have them sign them. Non-competes don't really hold up, but non-piracy, non-solicit, absolutely.
Right.
So they can't take in my information.
Intellectual technology or intellectual goods,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, absolutely. So that is definitely state specific, but if you can get it, absolutely.
Okay. So you had mentioned Sales Track, you mentioned the CRM. Is there any other type of resources or tools that you find that help you be a little bit more successful either on the technology side, on the marketing side, on when you're prospecting? What are some other resources that you're using that maybe give you a little bit more of an advantage or a leg up?
Sure. So one of the things that I've seen as businesses have grown, I've seen this a lot with franchises. Owners that have multiple franchises, they start with one, now they've got 20. They typically are having multiple entities set up, and as they add a new entity, they just have all separate insurance for all the separate entities instead of consolidating the whole thing into a massive insurance program. And so one of the things I can do to see kind of how that structure is set up is by going to, in my state, we've got just the state site has a list of verification of whether or not they've got workers' comp insurance. So I can see all their different entities.
Does each state have that?
Most states do. I don't know. I couldn't definitively say every state because I haven't searched all states, but I would say most do because it's mandated in most states outside of the monopolistic ones.
What is it called in Tennessee? So maybe it'll give people an idea for their own state. What's it called in your state?
So Tennessee workers' comp verification is what I just do a Google search and it takes me to the tn.gov site, and then I pull up the workers' comp verification for that. And then I can share a link in IAOA after, but in Georgia, Alabama, Kentucky, they all have it. All the states touching Tennessee have it, and extremely useful, but also helps me determine kind of where they are from a current pricing standpoint. And this will get into some detail, but in most states they post the loss cost multipliers for a carrier. So if you know from the Tennessee.gov website what carrier they're with, you see what NCCI's voluntary cost is, what the loss cost multiplier, you got a pretty good idea of where they are from a pricing standpoint, whether or not you can be really, really competitive. So that's state of Tennessee's list of loss cost multipliers. And you can see on there at the top, Acadia at 1.49. So if, 8810 being clerical, usually is around 30 cents in the state of Tennessee, but their loss costs would multiply that by 1.49, bring that up a little bit. And so I can see on some of those, if they're with Allied Eastern Indemnity, I mean that rate they're probably getting hammered. So I know if it's a fairly clean risk, there's a ton of room for improvement. Versus you come down just a few below that at Hanover All American, they're a little bit below the loss cost. So it gives me just an idea ahead of time, something if I need it in my tool belt to bust it out and say, hey, I see you with so-and-so, their pricing is brutal. We crush them all the time. That's just another kind of small tool in my tool belt. I usually don't like to lead with the money thing, but if I'm getting roadblocks, I like to have that just in case.
Sure. And so you probably want to check what's a good search term for people to check in their own state to see what their own might look for. If you were in Nevada or New Hampshire, what might you search for to find that?
So work comp insurance verification, and then just put your state at the beginning of that. So TN work comp insurance verification.
Gotcha. And you can kind of see what that's almost, man, I wish they had this on the personal line side. That's almost kind of a,
yeah. I mean, it gives you the carrier, and it gives you the policy number. And in Kentucky, it gives you the X dates. And I want to say maybe even give you the premium history. It gives you a history, not just 1 year, but it goes back, I believe, 3 years. It is beautiful.
I imagine that being a pretty good prospecting tool as well, to be like, look, this is an area that I can really target, right?
Another good prospecting tool is the state fund. So in our state, you do have the list of the published list of people who had to go to the state fund. And the nice thing about that is you can pull it by premium size, by experience mod, by class code, and even by all the different states that NCCI is in. So Tennessee's an NCCI state, and most of the ones surrounding are as well. And so I every once in a while I'll check the list just to see if some new producer threw somebody in the state fund that shouldn't have been. You can tell pretty quickly, okay, yeah, they don't need to be in the state fund. They're 9102 class code with 20,000 in premium, 0.8 mod. They don't need to be in the state fund.
Right.
Can you give people a little bit of an idea what you mean by mod when you say 0.8 mod, so that they can understand maybe if they're not a commercial producer what that would indicate for them?
Sure. Specific to workers' comp insurance. So all of you in the monopolistic states, Ohio, some of the others don't have to deal with it, but basically it looks at your trailing 3-year history, claims history versus your premium that you spent. And so if you're doing better than the industry, if you have a 0.8 mod, you automatically get 20% off on your workers' comp. That's not a carrier thing, that's an NCCI thing. And so it can make a huge difference on your premium. I had one of my accounts had a claim, not a huge one, it's about 26,000, and their experience mod went from 0.76 to 1.07. That's a pretty good swing from getting almost a 25% discount, now getting charged 7% more. So premium went from 13K or 14K to 19, just off of that.
You mentioned a little bit about some of the different things that you're using, and I'm sure you're not immune to it. You're not deaf to it. In the personal line space, it seems like every other day there's somebody out there who's predicting the demise of personal lines insurance.
Yep.
Whether it's this side or the other, this company's pouring in a bunch of money to this new startup is doing this, the way that the industry is going to look in 5 to 10 years is going to be drastically different. Now, I believe that. I believe, I don't predict the demise, but I predict that things will look a lot different.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means. How has kind of the insurtech world, so to speak, I almost hate using that term, but I can't think of a better one. How has that world touched your business? How has it touched your niches? How has it touched the commercial space? Do you fear, maybe fear is not the right word, but what challenges do you see? What opportunities do you see? How do you see this kind of playing out in the commercial world with technology and the advancement of the evolution of insurance?
Yeah. Yeah. So I do see more and more movement in the small commercial. And when I say small this time, I mean really small, like
your
less than,
USLI type,
yeah, like less
home-based
than
businesses.
2,000 in premium. Stuff that, yeah, I have got a couple of $500 bops in the book, but I don't care if I don't write them. Like Hartford, for example, who I do have a good amount of business with, they are actively going after direct writing small commercial, that size space. And there are other carriers doing that. I don't fear them coming into the, maybe they will, maybe, and I'm sure they'll try. That doesn't worry me because I see the commercial space for size premiums, 10,000 and above, we're their third member of their advisory team. They've got to have their legal, they've got to have their tax, got to have their risk management, their insurance side. I don't know that I see that changing just because they can get a quote quicker.
There's a lot more regulation involved. There's a lot more hands in the kind of.
Well, and it's way more complicated.
Yeah.
I mean, you mess up. I mean, it's hard to mess up too bad on the auto. Yeah, you have the limits at state minimum instead of 100,000. That guy's out 75 grand. You've got a 50 employee company you don't write an umbrella for. They get sued for $10 million. Now all their employees are out of business and that company's gone. There's way more people affected. They take it a little bit more serious than
right. There's a horse head in your bed the next day. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't see that going away. I actually love competing with the online or hearing that somebody's with a non-local agency. That's like candy from a baby. If it's with a good carrier, broker record that, move it over, or cancel rewrite. I love those because people want that local trusted advisor to take care of them.
Right.
Sean, when you popped in with another question saying asking any carriers getting rid of underwriting on small commercial and fast tracking the policies.
Yeah, Hartford is really, really good at that.
Nationwide does that too, right?
And so Guard and Hartford are two that I write a lot of smaller commercial with. Hartford can go big, but they do like the small commercial. And on a lot of their stuff, it is quote to issue without talking to underwriting. Underwriting slows it down. If it doesn't need to get reviewed, may make it 2 to 3 days before it's approved. But usually if I bind that, the policy is generally available for delivery the next morning. With Guard, same thing, usually 24 hours. The full policy document is available for delivery, usually within 24 hours.
I imagine, I don't want to peg you into this role that you're not a novice. You're not a beginner. And you're not somebody that people should just assume it does kind of your mom and pop or small stuff. You actively are going after these bigger accounts, correct?
Yeah.
Tell me and tell the people who are here who are probably more on a peer level with you or desiring to get more on a peer level. They're people who are doing commercial. What are the next steps that you feel that you need to take in your agency to really go to that next level? Is it offering more of the total risk management? Is it getting more involved in the payroll? What is that next step for a guy like you?
Yeah. So I do love the total account solution that you can provide more risk management services. That's something I am lacking on that I don't have. One of my engineering accounts will not even let me look at their E&O because the agency they're with in Washington has all these special risk management services for the engineering space. I can't touch that at the moment. I don't have the ability to offer CE stuff for their licenses and whatnot that this agency can. And that is definitely a nice edge to have and will help get me to that next level. I do think about like Jesse Parenti with his pizza program. I mean, that software that he has custom built that he requires all of his new clients to come on to, I mean, is phenomenal.
Right. Have you seen that? Have you seen it?
Just snippets of it, not the full thing, but just in the little bit I saw, and then the detail that he was telling me about it. I mean, that's amazing.
Right.
Being able to solve a problem. It's a non-insurance product that he's created, but for insurance-specific needs, and then it just locks down the account because he's not just giving it to him because he likes him. So I definitely see the need to do more of that. And again, the more you niche, the more you can find the needs for that particular space and provide additional solutions for that particular space. Whether it is, if it's a professional service, CPAs, attorneys, engineering, they all have different professional needs that maybe you can help with, provide solutions for them.
Can you talk about some of the values? You talked about your involvement with property owners. What are some of the ways that you're solving problems for them that obviously has allowed you to be successful in that space?
Yeah. So recently, one of the things that I started was a mastermind group of sorts. And as an owner, I've been meeting with a group of other business owners over the last 2 years just to talk about running a business. Meeting with that group tomorrow morning. And as I was talking to some of my clients that were also business owners or property owners, they kept talking about how they didn't have other colleagues to really share some of the issues, some of the questions and whatnot, kind of like what IAOA is. They don't necessarily have that. So I created a just kind of a networking mastermind group to where we get together once a month with other real estate investors.
Good for you.
Just to talk about what's working, what's not working. And the first meeting we had was in December, and I mean, they all loved it. There was like 8 of us. It was a small group. And at the last one, there's about 15 of us.
Nice.
Meet again next month. Should have 20 or so. And initially it was just my clients. Now it's not all my clients. It's other people that they've invited, but it is just investors. If you don't own investment property, you're not invited.
That's a good group to be in front of, right?
We don't. It's awesome. There's no active selling to anybody. We're just there to help each other. Hey, a number of the guys in there own storage facilities, and they're talking about, okay, how do you determine the cost per square foot and all that. I mean, it's all the detail that you can only talk to another owner about.
Yeah, but you mentioned that you're not there to solicit, but it's in those things. I mean, if that's your niche, I mean, business happens organically. It's whether you're personal lines or commercial lines or life or health or benefits, or you're selling lemonade on the street corner. It's all about those relationships that you're building, right? I mean, and that's why people like me, I'll use me as an example. Anybody, who doesn't focus so much on commercial shouldn't be afraid of jumping in that space, because it's just like personal lines. It's just like anything else that we're doing. It's relationship driven, right?
And one thing I've found, so many business owners know less about their business insurance than they do about their personal insurance. It's just baffling.
That doesn't surprise me at all, actually.
No. Just a quick follow-up on that. So you said that this group that you've made has kind of developed of all property owners. Do you also manage and own properties, or are you just there because you're a resource for those types and you kind of created?
No, I'm the only guy there that doesn't own investment property. I will one day, but I'm just coordinating the group. So I created a rule of no outside investors, but I'm breaking my own rule.
And that's what I was kind of curious about. How you breaking the rules?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Well, we're not going to keep too much of your time. We've been on for about an hour even here. Keith, I want to thank you so much for just the time you've dedicated. We've had a bunch of people jump on. We've had some people jump off. We've had people go bell to bell with us. I just want to say thank you so much, not just for tonight, but I want to say thank you from the IAOA perspective. Thank you so much for being as giving as you are. Thank you so much for sharing and collaborating and just really jumping in and helping everybody. I mean, you've been a great resource to me offline, in person here, I mean, and to a lot of other people. And so I just want to say one last thing. We have one more. Bob says, thank you very much. I have one last question before we go.
Yeah.
I think this might be the most serious question. And I don't want Adam to chime in because I feel like he's a little biased.
This is certainly the most important one. I know where this is going. I got it.
Absolutely.
Will the Cubs win the World Series this year?
Yes.
Hands down, my man.
Yeah,
Keith, you got to come up. We'll go to a game.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, we're going to end there. You guys, thank you so much for being on the call. We're going to have this recording. We're going to do a little bit of some mixing and some bruising. We'll have the recording available probably in the next couple days. We'll put it on the IAOA site. We'll put it in the group. We'll let you guys listen to it again. If you guys have any more questions for Keith, I'm sure he would love. Don't send him a question personally. I want you guys to put this in the group. Tag him, because I imagine somebody else might have the same question. So if you've got another question for Keith, feel free to post that. And then if you haven't yet, buy your ticket to Innovation 18, because Keith is going to be hosting a special workshop for those people who want to start with commercial. So if you're a personal lines guy like myself or anybody else and you want to jump in commercial, make sure you're there in Phoenix to see Keith live. Thank you so much, Keith. I appreciate your time. Adam, you got anything any last
no,
words?
Just thanks to Keith, and thanks for everybody for tuning in. It's been a fascinating ride.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, you guys have a good evening.
All right. Take care.